Hello, we're here getting ready to seed some stuff in our greenhouse. Today we're going to be seeding leeks. The kind of leeks that we're going to be seeding are, we call them bunching leeks, so they won't ever get to be a full-size leek. They'll be really small and we'll bunch them together, kind of like a scallion, but with the flavor of a leek. We're doing this process at this time of year because leeks take a little bit longer to grow, especially to germinate, but a little bit longer to just come to a size where we're able to plant them. And so we do leeks a little bit earlier in the spring than we do some other crops, so they have enough time to grow inside of the greenhouse and then continue to grow outside of the greenhouse, and we can get a harvest in within our season. That varies by crops. So some crops like lettuce we'll seed every other week from right now all the way through September, October. And then some things like leeks we seed once in the spring, and that's the only time we plant them. So the first steps in the seeding process are choosing the appropriate size flat. So we use a couple different sizes. This one's a 72 flat, and that means it has 72 cells in the whole flat. We also use ones that have 128. Sometimes we do 200 and a little bit with 50s. Those are the main ones we use. And it really depends on how big the crop is and how fast we can get it out and get it planted. So lettuce turns around really fast. We can seed it and plant it really quick, so it goes into smaller cells. Whereas these take a little bit more time, so we want to have a little bit more soil for them to grow. Once we've chosen our flat, then we fill it. We get these big bags of Vermont compost, trucked in all the way from Vermont. They make a really good, it's all compost-based potting soil. We're an certified organic farm, and so our potting soil has to be organic as well. And being that it's compost-based, it really releases the nutrients slowly, so our plants can stay in the flats a lot longer than they might otherwise. So we will shovel soil into the flat and get it so it's entirely full. Once we feel like it's full, we'll sweep over the top to level the flat off so everything's even with the top of the plastic on the flats. And then after that, just before we seed, we need to make little holes in each of the cells where the seeds are going to go. We call that dibbling, and so most of our flats, we use this, which is called a rolling dibbler, and it rolls over the top of the flat and leaves us with a really nice even depth for each seed to go into. If we plant the seeds a little too deep or a little too shallow, they might still grow, but they probably won't be as consistent. So we try to get everything as consistent as we can, including the depth when we go to plant the seeds. And this is a really good way for us to get that good consistent depth, and it's very efficient. So we choose all our varieties. We always look for organic varieties when available. And then the specific varieties are a lot of trial and error. So sometimes we'll plant two or three varieties of the same crop in a year to kind of evaluate how they grow, and we'll try over a number of years. We'll also talk to friends, neighbors, other farmers to see if we're struggling with a crop, to see if they have a variety that's worked well for them. We have a number of different ways for each crop to seed, but one of the most straightforward ways is to take a little bit of the seeds and sprinkle a handful into our hand. And then we'll come through, these we're planting more than one seed, and so I'm actually going to go through and kind of count as I roll them off my fingers. 3, 4. So I've got 4 or 5 in there, and I'm going to keep doing that with each cell, kind of counting as I watch the seeds roll out of my fingers. And we shoot for 5, but if we get 4 in some or we get 6 in some, it's really okay. Not all the seeds always germinate. And even if we have a couple extras in there, that should be fine in terms of growing. Other crops, we try really hard to only get 1 in each cell, like lettuce. If we get 2 lettuce seeds in each cell, they'll both grow, but we'll end up with 2 small heads of lettuce as opposed to 1 nice big head of lettuce. Leeks are really tall and skinny, so they don't mind the crowding a little bit. I always try to be as organized as possible, so I always go in kind of the same direction, and that way if I have to stop and look away or refill my hand with seeds, I can tell a little easier where I started and stopped, because the seeds are dark black, the soil's brown, and a lot of times it's hard to tell where you've been. There's also more and more coming tools that help make the seeding process either a little bit easier or a little more precise. And so this one isn't necessarily about precision, but can make it a lot easier, especially in something like this where we're doing multiple seeds in each cell. And so it has different hole sizes. This one has 4 different options. And you choose the hole size that gets you close, and when you pull the trigger, it drops a couple seeds in. And so in 2 or 3 pulls of the trigger, I can have the right number of seeds that I want to go into each cell. And so it just makes the process a little more smooth and a little faster. So in addition to this tool, which is another aid that helps us seed a little more efficiently, we have a vacuum seeder. This is something that we built here on the farm. And the general idea is it is hooked up to a shop vac, so a pretty strong vacuum. And then we drilled holes that line up with each of the cells in the flat. And so we can pour seeds on top of this, turn the vacuum on, and we're able to roll the seeds around until we get one seed on each of the holes. And then because there's a vacuum on it, it's pulling each seed into each hole. And so the seeds with a hole stay put, and we're able to tap gently, and that will knock all the extra seeds down to the end. And then we can take all the extras that aren't vacuumed to a hole, and we can pour them off into a tray. Still with the vacuum running, we can take the whole mechanism, set it on top, and get it centered. The vacuum's still running, and then we'll shut the vacuum off. And we usually give it a couple really solid pats to make sure any seeds that might be stuck into the holes a little bit fall out. And then when we lift the whole thing up and off, we should have one seed in each of the cells. And so it's a little faster, and it's a lot more precise than we're able to be by hand. So once we have all the seeds in and we fill over all the holes or the dibbles, and the flat is nice and smooth over the top, we bring it down generally to the other side of the greenhouse, which is where we have all the plants growing. And usually we'll seed a big number of them, and we'll keep each crop or each variety grouped together, so we kind of have a little bit of organization, and we can keep an eye on how they're progressing as opposed to having them all scattered around the greenhouse. Once they're all set down here and we have a fairly big block seeded, we'll come through and water them. We try to water them right away after we finish seeding a group, because we really don't want the tops to dry out too much. It's a lot harder to get the soil wet after it's dried a lot than it is to kind of keep it wet. And so we'll water. When we water, we always try to mimic the rain. So we'll almost always have the hose up this way, so the water's going up and then falling down. We want it to be as gentle as we can, because there's a risk if we're too aggressive that we'll splash a lot of soil and potentially the seeds out of the cells that we just so carefully tried to seed. After that, we'll water usually 2 or sometimes 3 times right after seeding, and then after that, it's usually twice a day, sometime mid-morning and mid-afternoon. We try not to water too late in the afternoon, because we want the tops of the cells to dry out and also the tops of the plants to dry out. If the cells and the plants go into the night wet, 1 or 2 nights probably wouldn't cause that much of an issue, but there's a risk that we'll get pests and disease that can show up because they sit humid for so long overnight. So we really like to water kind of no later than 2 or 3 in the afternoon, so everything has a chance to dry out a little bit as it goes into the nighttime. So once we have the flats watered and set in their location, we need to start watching out for pests. Our main pest, especially this time of year, is mice. Mice have gone through the whole winter and usually are pretty hungry at this time of year. And so we're on the constant watch out for mice. The main way we combat mice are through old-fashioned mouse traps. And so we'll go through and set traps on the floor, and we'll also put them right on top of the flats in hopes that if the mice do get up and find the flat, that they'll find the mouse trap first before they get in. We've had times where we didn't set enough mice traps, and mice will come in and they will dig up every single cell and eat all the seeds, and we've lost thousands and thousands and thousands of seeds overnight just because the mice have gotten in and got them. So we're really vigilant about every time we seed, we set more mouse traps out. So in the seeding process, we try to incorporate students in wherever we can. So pretty much everything in front of me was seeded by groups of high school students. Through the seeding process, we're really trying to teach them both sort of good work habits in terms of being organized and following directions and that kind of thing. And then also just the process of a plant growing from a seed into a plant. And ideally, I try to plant things with the students a couple times a year that are really fast. So bok choy we can seed and plant and harvest all within like half a semester. And so it's really rewarding for me and for them to be able to see something that they seeded and planted and tended to, and then get to harvest it and bring it either to donate it to a food pantry or to bring it for sale in our farm store or at the school. So seeding at this time of year is really important to the farm. We're setting the stage for the whole season to come in what we're seeding right now. So this is a really important time of year to seed. And the reason we appreciate having a greenhouse like this is because we can get these things started a month or 2 months earlier, and so our plants get a much stronger start than they would have otherwise if we had to plant them straight outside. So this is a really important space for us this time of year, and an important process in order to get the farm started on a right foot and have a good season.